Hello and welcome to this webinar about property data management. So today mostly Caroline is going to do the talking. So it's me, Thomas, and Caroline Tiger Lake. We're going to talk about property data management in Naviate. First, I want to inform about the versioning. So Caroline is going to be using both news from 26.1, Naviate 26, Naviate for Civil 26.1. That one was released in June. It was also released for 2025. And notice that we, since this year, I think we've changed the numbering system. So all versions are called the same at the end. So 2025-26.1 is same as 2026, 26.1. And these versions are no longer released for 2024 or earlier. So those versions stop at the version 25.3. So you will need 2025 or 2026 to run the features that, or some of the features that we're going to show today. A lot of features that we're going to show today will actually work in previous versions as well. We are about to release a new, the features that we added into the 2026.1 version was update property set, ability to script update in a lot of drawings, merge property sets when you have issues with duplicated property sets, report object with faulty properties, so it scans the drawings for properties that are set to a value that is not correct. Also select objects without property set. Sometimes we need to know which objects do not have a property set that needs to have it. And we are working on a new version called 26.2. It's going to be released for both 25 and 26. And in there we have rename property to be able to change the name of a property in a property set. We have find and replace property, so it's going to be a property value. Find X, replace with Y. Find objects by handle if you have a report. I think Caroline's going to show some reports, so be able to find the objects. And create script by folder. You have probably a lot of drawings that you want to run property scripts on, so we created a tool in the coming version to be able to script on certain drawings, especially if you don't want to or familiar with using batch save utility. And we are just about to wrap this version up. The plan is to release this within the next couple of weeks. So bear with us about the news when we will be releasing those versions. So I will hand over to Caroline. I will stay on the questions pane. So if you have any questions, just write your questions there, and I will try to answer them or ask Caroline to answer them.
Let's get started. So I'm actually going to jump straight into demo mode. And I'm trying something new today. I've actually found a way of pinning this window on the right that we can see here. So this is actually my order of things that I'm going to do things in, so you can keep track of where I am and what we're going to see, and also what the commands that I'm using are called. So let me know if it's a good idea or if it's a bad idea, and we can see if I should use it more when I do demonstrations. So we're going to start. So we actually have 4 different areas that we're going to work with. We're going to talk about property set. We're going to talk about data, how to add that. We're going to talk about verifying that data, and then we're going to talk about export. And as Thomas said, quite a few of these have been around for a while, but some of them are new and it's available either in 26.1 or 26.2. But we're going to start from beginning. So we're going to start with working with our functionalities around property set. And I'm going to try and run through sort of not every functionality that we have, but a lot of the functionalities. But I'm going to try and be quite quick about the ones that we've seen before so that I have more time to talk about the functionalities that are new. So when we talk about property set, I just started a new drawing just to be able to show you this in a clean version. We can create property set in different ways. We can create them from XML, which is our standard one that's been around for quite a while. And this is sort of our basic one. So all our property sets that we have inside Naviate are stored via these XML files. So if I, for instance, want to import the plant data that I'm going to use in just a while, I can select that XML file, and then it's imported into my drawing. We can also export to XML, which is good if you want to store a property set outside of a drawing, which we also use when we're going to update property set in just a little bit. So then we use this XML file that we're using. We can also create property set from CSV. And this one is particularly interesting because it means that if we get an Excel file, for instance, from a deliverer of something, that they have their data inside of it, then we can start sort of getting that information in. We need to have a property set. So and we can pick up, like in this case, I have a CSV file from about curbstones. And this CSV file contains information that I want to add to my objects. But to do that, I need to have a property set. And I'm going to start by creating property set from these headings up here. So as long as you have a CSV, Excel file can be saved as CSV, we can create property sets from the headers inside those CSV files. Right now I'm opening a notepad just to make sure that Excel doesn't mess with me. So you can create that from the CSV file. Know that the CSV file needs to contain data. So it needs to contain at least 2 rows. So you need to have the column header, you need to have at least 1 data row for this one to work. You can change the list delimiter. I know that we have quite a few different nationalities in this showing today, which is really nice. And just know that depending on where you are, you might use different types of list delimiters, and we can select which list delimiter that you're using here. And then we import that property set. And this is a good way of sort of starting to create your property set because you get the names, everything is text, and then you can sort of fill in all the other information that you have. If you have attributes, we can create property set from that so that we can get information that way. And we can also create for our UK folks, we can create ADMM property set as well. So a couple of different ways of creating property set. But one of the problems that we've noticed with property set, now I'm going to move over to my file here, is that sometimes we get duplicate property set. As we can see here, I have one Naviate pipe example, and then I have duplicates of this property set. And this usually happens, or at least we found that it happens, when you update data shortcuts. And specifically, if the property set in this file has the same name, but different content, then Civil 3D creates duplicates of this. And it's actually creating 1 duplicate per, in this case, pipe object. So you can see that if you have a lot of pipe objects, you're going to get a lot of duplicates. And it's going to do this every time you update. So to solve this, you need to do 2 things. First thing is you need to fix this long list in your drawing. But then you also need to fix the problem in the original file. So in this file, we need to basically merge all these property sets into one. So we use the functionality called merge property set. And I'm going to say I'm going to merge my Naviate pipe example. And I'm going to merge everything into the first one because the first one is the one that's in the drawing. So it's going to merge everything into this one because that's the one that's correct. And then it's merged everything, and now I only have 1 property set. It's also removed all the lists. I didn't show you this, but it had the same sort of copies or duplicates of all the lists that the prop set are using. And we've actually noticed that the lists, or a customer of ours, have noticed that these lists can actually duplicate on their own. Without property set being duplicated, the lists can balloon out. So we actually added a functionality, or our buddy Dave in the UK added a functionality called Purge Lists that you can use that can actually just purge lists that are not used. So that one is brand new. I actually added to the UI this morning, so it doesn't even have its own icon yet. So I'm going to fix that before we release. So keep track of this. But if you don't fix this in the original file, it doesn't matter if you fix it in this one. It's just going to keep coming back. So to fix this, I'm actually going to turn off my camera as well, because we know that to make sure that we get all the focus on our drawing. So to fix this in the original file, in my case, it's because I have this data shortcut here. And in this file, in the source file, I have a property set that is the same name, but different content. So inside here, if I were to compare my property sets, I would see that I'm actually missing a property inside here. So I also need to update the property set. And this is a new functionality that we added as well called update property set. So we can actually go out and say that, yeah, you need to update this property set so that it's matching with my XML file. And I want to add missing properties and I want to remove extra properties. And right now I don't want to report this. And then it's telling me on the command line that, yeah, I was missing 2 properties and it's added. And now it's not going to duplicate anymore. So 2 parts, you need to merge to remove all the property set, but you also need to update the property set where you get the error from. And then, of course, save it and the file will be correct. So I'm actually just going to save this one. And now it shouldn't replicate inside here when I do synchronize. So I'm just going to do that real fast. So, and I only have these property set. This one is my Naviate tool palette. If I didn't show this one before, this is our standard tool palette where we have a lot of different functionalities that we can start from here, and we can also do things with this one. So I'm going to show you what we do with this tool palette. But I want to come back also to rename properties. So if we take a look at our property set here, if you do update, it's actually going to remove all the missing properties and it's going to add the new ones. But if you do that, it means that if you have information in one of the faulty properties, for instance, if I take a look at my that was not the one I was looking for. I was going to look at my curve over here. If I take a look at my angle here, for instance, if I say that in the default property set, it's actually called direction. If I then update, I'm going to lose this information. It's not going to move over because it doesn't know it's connected to the old property that's called angle. So sometimes you need to rename these instead. And we can do that inside properties, but we can also do that from a functionality. The reason why we have a functionality for it is that we're thinking that a lot of these functionalities we need to be able to run in multiple drawings. You need to be able to run this on all your models or all your drawings. So that's why we sort of create functionalities that we can run on the command line, even if you can actually solve it inside the specific drawing. But rename property in property set. I'm going to pick up my curb with a K. And I'm going to say I need to rename angle. And angle should be called direction. And I'm not going to report it right now. And now I have a property here called direction instead with the angle inside it. Reporting there, we'll come back to that, but I can actually, if I run this in a script mode and I run this on multiple drawings, I can get a report telling me this is what I've done. So that's why we always have the reporting question. If I just run inside my drawing, I don't need to report to a log file. So then it's a rename property. So if you need to maintain your information, you can do it that way instead. And then, of course, I can apply property set. So I can apply a property set from my properties, if I do plant data, for instance. But I can also apply it from the Naviate property palette, same thing here. If you use Naviate formulas, you need to do it from the property palette because then the Naviate formulas will be tagged. Add information. I can say that this one should be a birch. If I filled in a lot of information, I can also copy that. I can use copy property data from this one to these ones and just hit enter. And now they are also birches. So if I have multiple properties that I already fixed on one block, I can add that to all of them from copy properties. But I can change a lot of data manually. I'm just going to highlight this part because now we're leaving property set. So I can change data, and this is sort of how we plan these functionalities. We use the property palette to find objects. Like in this case, I can actually search for everything that has the plant data on it. I can also search for everything that is a birch. Right now, I think they're all birches, except the first one. So I can find objects, I can select objects, I can also do different type of functionalities for here. And then in the AutoCAD properties window, you change information that you want to do. If you use Naviate formulas, such as this pipe has a Naviate formula, which tells me it's the gap 250. So if I change this one to, if I do swap part, and say this one should be a 600, to make sure that I get this property set updated, we recommend, or I recommend, that you use update property set. So easiest way, select everything that has that property set, and then apply update set. And I'm just going to run through and make sure all the formulas are updated. There is a dynamic update, which should do its trick. Sometimes, depending on the size of your file and what other things you have running, it might not. So just to verify, I would always recommend before you export, before you take a look at your tables, run update property set to make sure you have everything updated. I'm going to add a property set to these ones as well. So I'm actually going to add my plant data to these ones. And I'm going to say that these ones should be pines. So I'm going to add that. I can also change information or change data from these property sets to in Excel. So if you find that you need to do edits that is easy to do in Excel and hard to do inside the program, I would recommend that you do them in Excel. So if I search for everything here with my plant data, I can export properties to CSV. And I'm going to overwrite a file that I did this morning. I'm going to overwrite it. I can append to it, so I can sort of fill in information. This is also a good way if you sort of want to get all the information out to someone else or to do tables and stuff like that. So this is also exporting, just exporting. But right now I'm exporting and then importing. So I just want to overwrite this one. I'm going to open this file. I'm going to open my Naviate support folder. And I'm going to say I need to open my plant data export. And here I have all my information. So if I, for instance, know that, yeah, I need to add my Latin name here. So this one should actually be a Betula popufolia. That's my birch. And then my pines need to be Pinus pumila. If you know what that is, you'll know it's not, doesn't really make sense, but this is a pine. So I can add this information. This also means that I don't have to be the person that makes these changes. I can actually extract all this and just say, add this to another person that keeps track of what should all this data be. So right now I have this type of data, but I could have a lot of different types of data that someone else needs to fill in, and then I can return it to my drawing. The only thing that you shouldn't change is the handle. The handle is how we keep track of getting the information back to the correct object. Also make sure, because Excel is Excel, that Excel doesn't format this in a strange way. I've actually blocked conversion when I open CSV files to make sure that I don't get these E numbers to display in something else. So make sure that you get the handle correctly. Otherwise, strange things might happen. But that's the part that's important. DVG as well, but just be aware of that one. So to get this back, come back to my drawing. I'm going to search for all my objects there again. import the properties, find the file that I changed, import to selected, and now they actually have the Latin name as well. So if you have edits that is easy in Excel, do them in Excel, and then bring the information back to the objects. I can also import, we talked about before, where if I have information from a company or from a deliverer or from other way, where I have sort of a complete set of data that I want to import, then we can use match. And the reason why we use match and not just import is that if we take a look at these curbs, for instance, I need to import information to all these curbstones, but the curbstones have different radius. So depending on the radius here, because these I've already created with our curbstone. Actually, I've done, just to show you, just to explain what I've done, I did extrude to create the solid for the curbstone, and then I used curbstone quantify curbstones to actually split them and to calculate and to add this information. So it actually checks, can this be created? So I can create these kind of solids for my curbstone. And it's telling me here that, yep, I need to have a radius 4 on this case, and I need to have a radius 3 here. So I need to import different types of information depending on the radius. And that's where we use match. So I already have the property set that I want to add the information to. But now I search for all the solids, because they have the props at curbstone, or props at curb rather. And I use match properties to import that information. And I want to say, find or take a look at the CSV file that contained all this information that we saw before. Take a look at the properties at curb. Find the property nominal radius. And again, if you don't have the list delimiter set correctly, it's not going to show me the different things. So list delimiter, important, depending on where you are in the world. So take a look at property nominal radius, match that with the column radius in the CSV, and import that information from that row to the property set, Marshall Standard Curve Boldnost. So that's what I want this one to do. Match that information and import the connecting information. Click OK. And now I have a second property set here. This one is radius 4, so it weighs about 70 kilos per unit. And this one is a radius 3, weighs about 64 kilos. So it's importing different types of information depending on the radius. That's why we use match. So match is a way of adding more information from a CSV file. Once we have all this information inside my drawing, I usually want to display it in some way. So if we go back to my Naviate tab, I can place labels. So labels, create schedule tables and labels. So to create these, I need to have property set on top of the object. So in this case, I have plant data. So I'm going to select my object. I say I want to have a plant data label. This is contained inside the prop set when we import it. So when you import property sets, we can import the schedules that we are using next to it. I also want to use a text height for 2.5. I'm going to add the label. And I'm going to place the label in my drawing. It's 2.5 at a scale 1 to 1,000. So if I now realize that, ooh, I need to have a different scale, I can abort or I can change it afterwards. So I'm going to change it afterwards in this type. So I'm going to place this one, select the rotation, and I need to have a leader, but it should be in the other side. So I need to change this one to top right instead, and then put the leader in the middle. When I select the next one, it's going to suggest the same placement. So I can just use enter to accept the same placement here. So as long as I do the same, but if I want to change the placement, I can just select a new placement, new rotation, and change the leader. This one should be top left, like that, enter. And then enter to, or rather escape, to place these. So if I now realize that the texts here are way too big, I need to change my scale. And then I run update table label. So I'm going to update them all. I'm going to say keep the schedule positions and keep the arrowhead positions. So just update for my scale. If I now want to move these ones, because I realize they are too far away, so I'm going to move them all. We'll notice that the leader is its own object. So I'm going to run the update again. Click all, and again, keep the position, keep the arrowhead, and it's updating the position. So any change you do, depending on if you want to keep or adjust, you can update to make sure that they look fine. That will do. But that's for our schedules, tables, and labels. If I want to do a table instead, I can select all my objects and do same functionality, but say I want to do a table, add a table, and then place that one in my drawing. And then we can get a total of our objects instead. So same functionality, no matter if it's a label or a table, because these are schedules. These are Civil 3D schedule tables, but it's just one row or multiple rows. That's basically what we do with them. That you can change there. So that's also a part of, and of course they are updated. So if I decide now that no, this one should actually be a pine, then it's going to change to be a pine. So Pinus pumila. So it's automatically updated to the information that you have in your property set. So that's a little bit about adding data. These are not, I don't think any of these are new. These have been around for quite a while. But what we're getting at now is our verify functionalities. And I think all of these are either from 26.1 or 26.2. So we work quite a bit because now we're sort of getting into that we have the data. We sort of started getting customers that are using to get the data on top of their objects. They're adding in different ways. And depending on the type of projects that they're using, maybe they're using IFC 4.3, which we're going to get there in just a little bit. But now they started seeing that, yeah, we need to verify. We need to make sure that we get the correct data. And how can we see what's actually happening and finding objects and stuff like that. So now we started working with verification functionalities. So, and all of these functionalities I'm looking at right now can be scripted. Because again, we think that you don't really, there's one thing in doing it on just your model, but you're also going to be able, or you have a need for running this on multiple objects. So I'm going to show you two versions of basically the same functionalities. So finding objects without property set. And all of these are on the find dropdown. So finding objects without property set. So if I start by selecting my pipe networks, so I'm just going to select all of my pipe networks. And then I'm going to run, actually, this is not selecting all our pipe networks. This is just selecting the same dimension because that's actually what I do. I'm going to show you how to actually select the pipe networks. So select, select, select. Now I'm sure that I get my all of the pipe networks. Try not to cheat on you. So, and then we can do find objects without property set. And say find everything that doesn't have pipe example. And what's left is what doesn't have the property set. And then I can either add property because they're selected. So I can add property set, or I can maybe realize that, oh, these should not be there. That's why they don't have property set. So that's find objects. Find and replace property. So I might be that I have a designer, for instance, designer 2, it says here. I need to change this on everything. So I can then use find and replace, or replace property. And I can say that take a look in Naviate pipe example, take a look at designer, find everything, and change it to my signature. Right now, running this, when I just click on the functionality, it's going to give me this dialog box. If I do file dia and cmd dia to 0, it's going to be on the command line. So that's how we switch between them. And then it's replacing everything, and now I have designer there. So easy way of changing everything, and you can run this on the command line to sort of run short scripts to change stuff like this that you want to do. Find objects with faulty property sets. Report objects with faulty property sets. or faulty properties rather. So now if I find everything with pipe example that has, and take a look at status. And then it asks me lists of valid properties. So right now I can just say that everything should be new. The status should be new on everything. And I don't have a list delimiter and I don't report it. And then it's just selecting everything that doesn't have new. So take a look in this property, what is the correct one, and find everything that doesn't match this. I can also, if we use the same sort of situation here, I can say take a look at status, and I can say it should be new or designed. I can add 2 of them. So either is fine, but if it doesn't match any of them, then it needs to be faulty. And then it's finding stuff that doesn't have that. It's also reporting on the command line what is the problem that I have here. So it's telling me what is the error here. And the third way of using this is that I can do the same thing, but instead of adding the approved values down here, I can actually say use a list. So if you have a property set that uses a list and you have a list definition, so if you take a look at status, for instance, I could say that, yeah, these are the okay values. So that's also a way of doing it. So if you have a long list, if you have codes, for instance, ARMA codes or co-class codes or whatever codes you're using, you can take a look at all that list and all of those are okay and everything else is not okay. So you can use that method as well, depending on what you're doing that you want to do. And again, it's reporting on the command line, but we can also report to a drawer or to a file. And that's what I'm going to come to now. Now we have script. So if I want to run multiples of these, I have a sort of checklist that I want to do. The easiest way is to create a script from it. So I have a script here called property check. And if I show you this one, we can actually see that it's running, first it's running prop set update. So it's making sure that I have my correct property set. It's running objects without property set. So finding that. And then it's running report objects with faulty property twice. So it's looking at status and it's looking at designer. And it has a file that is the approved values. So, and you can build this sort of almost as long as you want. So you can check multiple things in the same method or in the same script. So a BIM manager could create this and make sure that, yeah, this is the one, everyone should run this on their files to check that you're compiling with or complying with our settings. And as soon as I run this one, it's going to go through the settings or the checks that I just described, doing everything inside my drawing. And the result is, if I go to my folder for today, the result is in the report. So the report here, and I actually run this quite a few times to test because the report will fill. So I can actually check here that, yeah, I run this test quite a few times. And I can say that I just want to see what I had today, right now, 1437. And this is all the things that I have. So I have a couple of different faulty properties. I have some, I think that's all that I have. So I don't have anything that doesn't have a property set. It ran the prop set update and it ran faulty properties. Now, how do I find these objects? Then we come back to handle. So we have the handle on the right side here. And if I know that, okay, I want to find these objects because they have the same problem with status, so I want to find these. So I'm going to select these cells, copy that, and then use find object by handle. Paste on the command line, and then hit enter, and it's going to select those objects. So this is a handy way of getting everything out there. And again, someone else can run this on your files, and you can just get this report. And then you know that, okay, this is what I need to fix to make sure that I get everything correct. And hopefully the report that you get tomorrow will be shorter. And then you can find the objects via the handle that you want to do. If you want to run this on multiple files, then we can use the command called create script by folder. So this is designed to run the script that I just showed you. It can run any script, so anything you want to do where you have a script, you can run this. But we developed this specifically for this purpose. So I'm going to find the script that I just showed you. It's an SCR file. We can read both SCR and script, but you need to remember to change that one. So property check, run that script, run it on the files that are in here, in my control files. Don't save them. Right now, I'm just checking, so it doesn't need to save them. If I run a script that requires saving, I just switch over to yes, and then where do you want to save them? If you select the same, then we can just overwrite them, or you set a suffix, so it's actually creating copies of the file. But for my purpose, what I'm just going to control is just opening, checking, closing without saving, so you don't get a new version of the file. We can also add a start script and end script, so you can sort of do a beginning when you open your Civil, because this runs inside Civil 3D. So you can combine different types of scripts in this way. When you do save, it's going to save this script. I'm going to overwrite the one that I did this morning. And what we're actually doing is that we're compiling a script that runs all these functionalities and then adds an open and a close, or an open, save, and then close. So the next step is to run this script. So cancel this one, and again, script. And then I'm just going to run my base model test. Now, if you're going to run this on multiple files, right now it's running on 2, so it's going to be pretty quick. But if you run on multiple files, it's going to lock your Civil 3D. But we're thinking that it's an easy way of sort of handling this so that you actually know what's happening and sort of see everything running. So if you run this, leave it overnight, go take a coffee break or something like that, and just let it sort of run through it, everything, because you can't work with your Civil while it's running inside. And once it's done, oh, right. I had the report open, so it couldn't run. I thought it was a little bit too quick. Then it probably aborted. So I'm going to run this one again. So yeah, so I mean, that's the downside of it, that it's not really going to tell you what's happening, depending on what's happening. But in this case, it just aborted because it couldn't find the file. So it didn't really report as an error. It just failed to do what it's supposed to do. So now we can see that it's been updated. So inside this report, so I mean, a manager can run this in the evening on everything, and then they get this sort of report in the morning, and they can go in and say like, yeah, okay, for these files, we get these types of errors. It needs to go to that person. So you can sort of filter this, as Excel is very good at, and you can see what errors we find inside those different files that we do. And hopefully, again, this should be smaller and smaller the more times you do it. So these are our verification functionalities that we found so far that we know that we need to verify. So the question is, what else do we need to verify that we can either solve with our functionalities that we have, or do we need something else? So start testing these and see what you see, and see if we find anything else that we need to verify. Final part. I think I'm going to manage to keep time, so that's good. I've been kind of worried. I had a lot to go through today, so it's a long one. But final part, export objects. So I'm just going to save this one. I'm actually going to save it as a copy, just to so I have my base already there. So exporting corridors, or exporting objects rather, with property sets. So we have all these properties on our objects, and depending on how we export, we need to make sure that we keep this information. We want to have it with us when we export. So I have two different objects types here. We have pipe networks and we have a corridor. And these work a bit different. So depending on which area you work with, you might need to do in different ways. So pipes are easy, because pipes is individual objects, and those are the ones that we export. So if we have a property set on the pipes, then if we run our export network and say that, yep, I want to export these 3 networks, I can copy all property set to my exported solids. So this exports to AutoCAD solids, or rather, yeah, AutoCAD solids, but property set is Civil 3D, so it's still Civil 3D file. Exporting everything to a new drawing, deleting the solids from this drawing, and I want to overwrite the drawing that I'm exporting to. So inside the exported drawing, when it's been exported, come on, there we go. We actually have our solids. And the thing about using this functionality is that you don't get anything else. You just get your pipe network. So no alignment, no labels, no text, nothing. Just the pipe networks as solids and with data. So you get the property sets that the pipes have on the object that you're exporting. So that's for pipes. So again, pipe is easy. Road is harder. Not harder, but more complicated, because the road is its own object. So if we want to export, we're actually creating new objects. We're creating solids from this road. Road is not my top area, but I'm going to show you how it works. In this case, I actually have a property set, or rather, I don't have a property set. I'm going to add a property set. I'm actually going to add just to it's not the best one, but just to show you how it works. I'm going to add my pipe example. This is not the correct property set that we should use, but if I add a property set that contains information on my corridor, we take that property set and add it to the solids. So you can store information on the corridor that we're adding to the solids. That's what I'm going to come at. So that's why I have my pipe example, even though it's a stupid example. But now when I use, let's go to road, solid from shape on my corridor. And I'm going to not export everything. I'm just going to export pay 1 and 2. I can create multiple solids, and I can do all the fancy things that we do inside here. But I can also, it's going to add a property set on its own. But again, it's adding one more that I want to do. And then it's creating the solids for me. So now I get duplicate, or I get 2 property sets on these solids, because I both get the property set that I had on my corridor, and I get the one that the functionality adds, which adds a lot of information from the corridor itself, where it comes from, the corridor, the volumes, and the placement, and all those things. So 2 ways of sort of getting information on top of your solids if you're working with roads instead. But just to make sure that you sort of, it's possible to get this information in there. Now, if we then talk about our final thing, which is IFC port 4.3, and this is sort of why we're always talking about property set right now, is because if you start working with IFC 4.3, you need to start with property sets, because that's how we're going to get information in there. So the more you know about property set, the better prepared you'll be when 4.3 comes, or when it comes to you. We've already seen it come to some customers, but so that's the sort of idea behind this. But if I now use IFC infra export, which is the command to export to IFC 4.3, if you don't have the functionality inside your drawing, it is a separate extension. You need to install it from manage.autodesk.com. So it's not directly available inside your Civil, but you can install it very easily. So I'm going to create a new one, because if this fails, I have one that I did this morning. It's not going to fail, but you never know, you know. And then it's exporting the file to IFC infra. It can't export everything. And I get this question sometimes that, well, how do I get my polylines out to IFC 4.3? And the answer usually is you don't, because you can't export everything to 4.3. It's going to grab 3D objects and 3D adjacent, or rather solid adjacent objects. So stuff that Civil 3D thinks is solids, as in if you have blocks with solids in them, it works. If you have block with 2D, it might not work. So depending on the object type, they might just be removed from the export. and that's the way the file works. So I'm going to show you this one. Also be aware, depending on the viewer that you're using. Right now I'm using BIM Vision. There are multiples, but depending on the viewer, they might display it a little bit differently. So if you take a look at the hierarchy, for instance, it might be different. But right now I'm just going to show you standard, how it looks, just to show you sort of the examples of this. So we have the pipes here, pipe segment. We get both the pipe example, but we also get part data from the actual pipe that comes along with it. And we get pay item, we get stuff like that. If you've done this on your own and you think that, well, you didn't get a surface there, you didn't get a lot of other properties here, yeah, I have created a couple of settings file, export property mapping JSON, that actually removes a lot of the stuff that I don't want to use. So these settings file can be used not only to add more information, but also to remove stuff. So I've actually gone in here and said that I don't want surfaces to be exported. I just want to see my objects. That's the easiest way of making sure they don't come along. For my corridor, the corridor is actually exported as IFC road. So a corridor in itself has a lot of exports that we do. So that sort of takes care of its own hierarchy, but we still get a lot of information on top of here. But to get the information that we added to it, we actually need the solids. So you'll notice here that I have built elements. So these are the solids that I exported where I have the property set. So this is something that we're looking at right now and seeing, okay, how can we do this the best way? How can we make sure that we get information on the corridor in the same way that we do for our pipe network? Because again, pipes are easy, corridors are hard. So this is something that we're getting ourselves into right now and making sure, how can we make sure that this works with our Naviate assemblies. So that was the final thing that I had in my little list here. Again, let me know if you like this list. I kind of like that I didn't have to switch back and forth, that I had this up here. If it's just disturbing or if it's just confusing, then please let me know. Are there any questions? Probably not. No, I didn't see any during the time. Or anything that you feel like adding to. Thomas, have I missed anything? Anything you want to add?
No, I think you covered the essential things here, definitely. We do have some questions. Is it possible to export IFC to a specific coordinate?
The IFC export uses the coordinates. I can't even remember what it's called. The coordinate system that you selected in your drawing. So that is the one that it's actually using. We know that it's also using an internal coordinate system. So when you export, the first time you export in a file, you're going to get a project base point. You can move this one after you set it up. You can actually manipulate the IFC export to ignore this. So you actually get the project base point at 0, even if you're using sphere of coordinates. It's not recommended. The reason why they use a project base point is to make sure that all the graphics work as intended. So it's recommended to use a project base point, but I've tested it and it works. I wouldn't do it with too big drawings, but it is possible. You need to sort of hack, and it's going to tell you that I don't want to do this, but fine, I'll do it. But yeah, so that's how they handle the coordinate system. So specific coordinate, no, but specific coordinate system that is a part of Civil 3D, yes, you can do that.
And we also had a question about which features that actually work in 2024. And I think that in the beginning, I showed some of the things that were new. And I would say that importing and exporting to Excel, match properties, create property sets. Yeah, you have the list there. You can actually show which features are.
I would say those. And I mean, these works as well. I would say something like that. Have been around for quite a while.
I think find objects without property set also, but we did change things in.
Yeah, we did
Mm.
update that one. So it's there's a version of it previously, but we updated that one. I think the script part of it.
Yeah. So the majority of the features work, the basis of things, but we've added tools to verify and update, and most things are scriptable, as we said.
Yeah, and I mean, with these functionalities, especially corridors and solids, I mean, there might be updates inside, and it's bug fixes and stuff like that. So maybe we do a lot of things that we don't maybe not talk that much about, but that we tend to sort of forget once we fixed it. So.
And will this webinar be available to watch afterwards? Yes, we will, or it has been recorded, and we will send to every attendees or everyone signing up. Normally, I think this time as well as the others, we have about 50% signing up, or 50% of the ones signing up to the webinar is attending, and we notice that the rest look at the recording. We think it's nice that you attend and have questions. It brings more life to the demo. So thanks for those questions that came, but you will be able to see this afterwards as well.
Yeah.
Any final things, Caroline?
Yeah, I just want to quickly see how you want to filter out the unwanted objects. It's actually inside the IFC infra configuration JSON. There's a lot of settings in here. I'm not going to go into that because I mentioned it. It actually has several rows about what it should export. So I've set it up so that surfaces shouldn't come in, alignment shouldn't come in, and stuff like that. So I've just sort of filtered out. This is only to make sure that I get a file that I can nicely demo. So it's not a recommendation that this is how you should do it, but just so I know what I'm getting out. But that's in the IFC infra configuration file. But the config files is its own rabbit hole to go down into. So it's an interesting way, but it's a lot of settings down here. Yep. Otherwise, I think I'm good. Thank you for listening. Yeah. And if there are any questions, you can always reach out to us afterwards, and we can answer them.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.